Big bird on the beat. Big bird on the beat. Big bird on the beat.
There's almost a psychic, you understand the word psychic? You know, ESP? Yeah. There's almost a psychic attraction. You're not sleepwalking, you're not dreaming, you're really conscious, but something is making you brave. Something's making you get closer and closer to the cornstalk. Although I would use the flashlight as a weapon, meaning if you're afraid, I think rather than holding the flashlight comfortably down here, you'd hold it out like that. It's kind of like a lance, you know, a magic user lance. You know, as you walk through here, and I would come out of the house this way, and across the lens, which looks very pretty, and also it's kind of scary. My appetite has always been to, you know, put a lot of value on the screen, and sometimes, you know, the people become somewhat diminished because of the story that surrounds them. But with E.T., I had always really wanted to tell the story of a disenfranchised and lonely boy in a relationship with siblings, a sister, a brother. I had 3 younger sisters. And I also wanted to tell a story about the divorce of my parents.
Dad would believe me.
Maybe you ought to call your father and tell him about it.
I can't. He's in Mexico with Sally.
And for a while I've been thinking about just a movie about a child's reaction to his parents splitting up when he's still only about 10 years old, and how that impacts him for the rest of his life. And E.T. was on my mind maybe for 15, 20 years, perhaps for a number of years somewhat subconsciously, as a fantasy of mine, as a way to, you know, to make myself feel less lonely in my life. And also, it was a childhood fantasy to tell the story of a best friend and a special friend who rescues a young boy from the sadness. Was a movie, really, it was really the original movie, and E.T. therefore is the sequel.
One of the things that really, really inspired me to want to work with Steven was Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The movie had a profound effect on me, and I really feel in looking back that that movie, more than anything, was the catalyst that really moved me into saying, this is what I want to do as a career. I want to make movies. And so when I did, in fact, find myself eventually working with Steven, one of the things that we talked a lot about was the research that he had done during the making of Close Encounters with a man named Hynek. And he asked me to go investigate a particular case.
Having to do with a farm family that was terrorized one evening by gremlin-like extraterrestrials that surrounded the house and kept trying to gain access to the house and rode the cows through the barnyard and made the people crazy.
And I'd seen this movie called Return of the Secaucus 7. Now, why in the world this had anything to do with E.T.? This is the kind. I was intrigued with John Sayles, and no one knew who John Sayles was at the time. And I went running downstairs after the screening to meet him. And I said, I love the writing in your movie, and I think you might be perfect for this project that I'm working on with Steven Spielberg. Could you come meet with us? So he came over to the Egg Company, he sat down and he met with us. We gave him the research on Night Skies, and he wrote the first draft of Night Skies.
But when I read the script, I just didn't feel that was a movie that I wanted to direct. It was too violent. It turned me against myself and against my own beliefs that anything that would take so many light years and so much technology just to get to the planet Earth, would they come with lasers and missiles and you know, bad intentions? Personally, I never thought that would be the case. I thought they would come here to either observe at a distance or to interact in some kind of healthy way. So it really went against my grain as a filmmaker and as a storyteller to tell an aggressive, scary story about aliens attacking a farmhouse. And that's when everything kind of like changed in my mind, and it sort of became, I'm not going to make that movie, but I might make this movie. Raiders of the Lost Ark, we were shooting that sometime around 1979 or 80. We were shooting Raiders. And I remember spending not a lot of time between shots, because I shot Raiders so quickly there wasn't a lot of time to think between shots, but there was a particularly long setup, and I walked out into the desert. I was picking up prehistoric seashells out there, because certainly, you know, the desert in Tunisia used to be the ocean a long, long time ago. Maybe that's where Jurassic Park came from, at least my interest in dinosaurs. I don't know, but that all kind of was a cousin to turning over seashells and suddenly trying to figure out, how can I tell the story of this lonely boy? I'm sitting here, I'm a lonely director in the middle of the desert in Tunisia, making a Saturday matinee serial type of a movie. And I won't go into my personal life, but I was feeling a little bit, separate from, from myself, which often happens when you're directing. You kind of go into a kind of fugue state to make a movie. And I was in one of my fugue states, and I suddenly, bang, this concept hit me. I knew exactly how to tell the story of E.T., and the story began to flood into my mind. And for the next couple of days, during the shooting of Raiders, E.T. pretty much had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Cut. Great. Beauty. Okay, very nice. Good for the charge? Watch it. Great. Beautiful. You didn't see in the last little... Yeah. Henry? Great. You okay? Yeah. That was terrific. What? So kind of like the bones of the story began to fall into place in the middle of the Tunisian desert, looking at seashells. And it took me 2 or 3 days to kind of figure out a story. And then when I had it, I remembered loving this movie called The Black Stallion. I love that picture so much. And I remember loving the way Carol Ballard directed it, and then discovering, or knowing, that Melissa Mathison, who was on the set with Harrison Ford, had co-authored the Black Stallion.
I was in Tunisia with Harrison on Raiders of the Lost Ark, and of course I had been around in London where they had started the picture, and so had become friendly with Steven Spielberg and Kathleen Kennedy. So we went off to Tunisia, and I had been trying to write a script based on a book I had optioned, and I was very unhappy with it and feeling pretty miserable about myself. And one day we were out in the Sahara Desert, and Steven was showing me how to find scorpions, that you just turn over a rock, and there they are. So we were turning over rocks, looking at scorpions, and he asked me if I would consider writing a movie for him. Well, of course. I think I did protest that I was never going to try to do that again.
And I kind of worked on her. I worked on her and kept nagging her about. Went to Harrison. I said, Harrison, talk to your wife. I think she should write this movie. And then I remember Kathleen Kennedy went after Melissa and tried to talk her into it. And between Kathleen Kennedy and Harrison Ford, I think the two of them talked Melissa into at least doing a first draft for me. And so that's how it all got started.
Many of the scenes from the movie, E.T., come from my own experience being with children. For instance, Harrison's, the Willard and Benjamin Harrison's sons and their friends and other people, what children, what they would like from an alien, what they would like his powers to be. A lot of the children would mention the obvious of telepathy or telekinetic powers, but I was struck by the fact that several of them mentioned that they would like, if this magic creature came into their life, they would like him to be able to heal. And I thought it was such an incredibly poignant idea to come from a child. And they weren't talking about save someone's life by healing. They were talking about take the owies away. And I thought it was just so simple and such a personal idea coming from a child. And, of course, E.T. heals.
I was very interested also in that E.T. would communicate often psychically, could be able to reach out to Elliott in school and give him ideas while he was sitting in class. And if E.T. got drunk, Elliott got drunk.
As we get started with the dissection, remember that the things that you are writing down.
And Elliott would start becoming and feeling E.T., a feeling that E.T.'s psychic spirit was inside of him. And that was really interesting. And those were ideas. I didn't know where it was going to go. Melissa didn't know where it was going to fall into the structure of the movie. But these were just like the wish list of, can we put this in the movie? Can we put that in the movie?
I think Steven Spielberg and I decided very early on that we didn't want to have any adults, mucking up the works, basically. And if it was important for a couple of reasons. First of all, E.T., being this little creature that he was, only lived with people of his own size, basically. That the world that he saw, the Earth that he saw, was small. It was filled with little people. So when he went back to his planet, he would basically be reporting on a planet that was populated by children, which we thought was kind of a poetic idea. And secondly, for Elliott, Elliott had to have the power in the movie. If for a moment an adult took the power away before it became a matter of life and death, then Elliott would have lost all of his magic.
I never wanted to show grown-ups in the movie until the very end. I wanted to suggest them, show them from the waist down, kind of like a Tom and Jerry cartoon, where the mom of the house comes in, you only see her from the waist down. Later we did that kind of even better with Roger Rabbit, when Bob, did that same technique with Roger. But that's almost a requirement of cartoon. The whole cartoon world, when you have animals as cartoon characters, adults are not often shown. I like those old Tex Avery cartoons where you only see people from the waist down. And I was also raised on cartoons. I was raised with television, raised with cartoons, and it just made sense to me to create a world. I didn't want that world contaminated with anything beyond at most a 14-and-a-half-year-old's point of view.
Some of the things that you should be looking for during the dissection is to locate the heart and notice that it is still beating.
And as I remember it, I would write for 4 days, 5 days in my little office in Hollywood, and then I would drive out to Marina del Rey, where Steven Spielberg was editing in a little apartment on the beach. And I'd bring in my pages, and we'd sit and we'd go through the pages and say what worked, what didn't work, where we'd go from there, talk about the next hunk that should be written. Then I'd go back to my little office and do my writing and come back again a few days later to meet him. And it took 8 weeks for us to get the first draft, which was quite fast, I think.
And she delivered this 107-page first draft to me, and I read it in about, I'm a slow reader, but I think I read that in about an hour. And I was just knocked out. It was a script that I was willing to shoot tomorrow. I didn't really want to do a lot with it. It was honest, and it was right from both of our hearts, but Melissa's voice made a direct connection with my heart.
I was having lunch with Willie Hunt, who was an executive at MGM at the time. In fact, we were discussing Poltergeist, because we were making Poltergeist at the same time. And Steven came running into the commissary with the screenplay, and he said, "I've just read Melissa's first draft, and we could shoot this tomorrow. It's the best first draft I've ever read." And I think in many respects, Steven would say that that's true even today.
I was going to do E.T. for Columbia, and I think they liked the script. They didn't dislike it. And there's a number of rumors I heard, and I don't want to report a rumor because I don't have any facts to base this, but by hook or by crook, Columbia chose another movie they had in development called Starman that eventually became a wonderful movie starring Jeff Bridges. And they chose that over E.T., and they said, "But look, we're not going to make your movie, but we'll certainly give it back to you to take anywhere you'd like." And I got the rights back and took it immediately to Sid Sheinberg, my mentor, my friend, and the head of Universal Studios. And I showed him the script, and I even at that point had even we had I believe E.T. in clay. We had the head in clay, and we had some visual concepts that I had done with Ed Verreau on paper. And I remember sending Sid the script and a picture of a clay bust of E.T. and some drawings that Ed Verreau had done to decide whether he wanted to make the movie or not. And the next day he called up and he said, "I think it's a very good idea for a movie. Go ahead and do it." So we set off to make the picture at that time. Night Skies from the John Sayles script, I hired Rick Baker. You know, undoubtedly, you know, the best creature, you know, designer, you know, at that time ever. And I mean, to this day, Rick Baker and I continue to work together and do films together. He's just